Hey, it's Nicole. Welcome back to the Serial Entrepreneur Show. So excited to have you and to introduce you to our guest, Gareth Evans. Gareth has been a leader his entire life, and I bet if you're listening, you know what that's like. But his time in Iraq following the Gulf War set his mission in motion. It opened his eyes to a world without access to reliable energy and other basic essentials. I can only imagine the basic essentials that people need to survive. He saw the impact that can have on the stability of a region and the health and success of businesses and communities. He's going to talk to us all about that and what he does as CEO at Vecta. Let's go. Hey, if you're an entrepreneur who usually fast forwards intros just like this one, this is the podcast for you. Hey, just a reminder, our show is brought to you by Smart Cookie Media, where we believe data tells a story, and not just any story, your business story. As a subscriber to the show or as a client, you'll get insights on profitable, data-driven marketing strategies that work for you and your business, your industry. Not some cookie-cutter trends, no. Ideas that are led by your customer data so you know they'll work for you. Connect with me on LinkedIn or Instagram to learn more. Everything's in the show notes. Now, let's get back to the show. Gareth, tell me, how would you finish this sentence? You know you're an entrepreneur when?
You are absolutely relentless in the pursuit of whatever it is that you set your sights on. And are you willing to stay positive, stay in the moment, keep showing up with the right energy, attitude, and take it as it comes?
Is there a story there?
There's many stories, I'd say, from that perspective. I think particularly for Vecta, this is a very unique business, a unique industry. I pitched it to over 120 different venture capitalists and realized that everyone's got their own area of interest, their own risk box, their own capital metrics, and you don't have a clue what they are, and you have to just be completely relentless.
I happen to notice in the background some fun things sitting behind you. I just want you to picture this real quick. If you're listening in the car, in the background, I see this massive hammer and a bunch of little cars in front of it. So Gareth, Tell me, what is it?
Yeah, so that is an Uberman hammer. And for those that have never heard of it, neither had I. But one of my colleagues decided he was going to take it on. And it's one of the longest endurance events in the world. It's a swim from Catalina Island to Los Angeles, which is over 20 miles. It is a ride from LA to Death Valley, which is over 400 miles. And then it's running from Death Valley to the top of the highest mountain in California, which is, I think, over 100 miles. So it's completely ridiculous. I am personally training for a 100-miler myself, so I know some of the pain, but not the extent. And so Rob did this over a week. I was part of his swim support team. He was impacted by tides on the swim. So he got like over 20 hours into the swim and essentially wasn't making any progress at all. And he was still like 5 miles away from being finished. And he had to pull a cord. But he said, I'm not going to give up. I'm going to go and do the swim and the run. And then he got approval from the organizer to actually come back to the exact spot where he stopped and finish the last leg of the swim. And so I jumped in and swam with him. He then honored me with the hammer. And this hammer is awesome. It's filled with rocks from the beach. It's metal with this beautiful handle and it weighs a ton. It's a good reminder of how you have to absolutely grind it out, surround yourself by a support team and, plan, prepare and ride the emotional roller coaster of doing what we all love to do.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
Yes.
I can't wait to get into how you got here, but let's first tell everybody, what is it you do? What business do you own? What do you solve in the world?
Yep. Vecta is the company, CEO of Vecta, and we started in 2019. And our mission is to simplify, accelerate, and modernize how we all get our energy. And so today we are focused on supporting commercial and industrial business owners to access more affordable, profitable, and reliable power. The grid that we all rely on for our energy. None of us really think about energy. It's this mythical thing that shows up typically when we need it at a price point that has been up until now acceptable. But our infrastructure is aging. It's almost 100 years old in many cases. It's becoming less reliable, more expensive, and businesses need to be able to provide reliable, affordable products that are now increasingly sustainable. And most businesses don't know how to think about that. They don't know how to do it. And so we help them go on that energy transformational journey and generate and store their own energy right at their facilities such that they can be actively in control of their energy versus passively buying it from a utility.
So sometimes I work from home, I run my business from home. And so the way I've solved that problem at home is I get my kids on 2 exercise bikes.
Yeah.
I have them start running fast as they can. So that way the business does not suffer, right? It can't afford to suffer. So I'm
Exactly.
sure there's more ingenuitive ways you guys have come up with, but I thought we'd start with what we do around my household to, keep the lights on
Love it.
sometimes. So,
I really lifestyle,
I love it.
exercise,
So,
fitness,
so
and
Yeah.
everything.
notice I said my kid, by the way. Now I'm not
Yes,
running.
totally.
I'm
So, Gareth, you said, we don't all think about it. And that's true. We don't. Or I find myself struggling sometimes when I'm trying to explain it to my 3-year-old, like what is energy or electricity, or he wanted to know about lightning recently and, why we were getting in the vehicle quickly instead of hanging out outside when there was a lightning storm. However, also this week, twice, we drove downstate Indiana. So we live northwest Indiana, right in that little corner near Chicago. And when we do, farther down, there's a wind farm, massive wind farm, where my kids will actually look for which windmills stopped or stuck or they're not running. It's kind of like a I Spy, if you will. We did that trip twice, but also when we went to go visit their auntie, there's also a solar farm in her teeny tiny town. I think that it says like they welcome us to the population of 1,000, maybe 965. I don't know. It's very small, but even solar is there in this little tiny town and they are harnessing that power. I am going to give one more example to everybody listening since we're in Chicagoland. I was paying attention as a roofer's daughter to what Illinois was deciding about white coating on high rises and how that was impacting heat and urban heat, our big giant parking lots, and what they were making decisions on, when Indiana was making very different decisions about white coating or even solar panels on roofs. So can you tell us very specifically, are you helping people tap into that? Are you helping people place that? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So today we all passively consume energy. So we have a utility or an energy provider. They typically generate power through burning coal, gas, oil, in some cases nuclear power. To your point, sometimes it can be wind, sometimes it can be solar. These are typically very large facilities in the middle of nowhere, and they generate energy. And then that energy is sent to us down long power lines, and then we receive it. And we don't understand where it comes from, but it shows up when we need it on demand, and we pay a bill every month for it. The challenge is that infrastructure was actually first designed literally 100 years ago, and it hasn't changed a whole lot since. And in some cases, actually, the infrastructure we're relying on right now is 100 years old, 50 years old, 30 years old. Regardless, it's old. There is no other aspect of our business where we rely on technology that is that old. And today, the delivery of energy is becoming increasingly less reliable because the infrastructure is aging, becoming harder to maintain. It's being impacted by weather events, by cyber attacks, by whatever it is, like the reliability is reducing. And so the cost of power outages to businesses in the US in the last year alone was $150 billion. You then combine that with the fact that energy costs are going up every year, year on year, at a volatile and unpredictable rate. Those prices are never going to come down. And the reason for that is, as our utilities have to invest in maintaining this infrastructure, the only people that pay for those upgrades are the ratepayers, you, I, and business owners. And so as a business owner, imagine saying to a supplier, you can offer me a service that is less good than it was yesterday, and you can charge me more money, and I'll continue to pay that bill, and I won't even look at it. And that's the reality of today's energy situation. And it's kind of bonkers when you think about it like that. And so what we support businesses to do is say, how much energy am I using? Where am I using it across a single facility or thousands of facilities around the world? And then what is my option to be able to reduce my costs, reduce my emissions, and increase my operational reliability? And we use a combination of solar, wind, batteries, gas turbines, electric vehicle charging infrastructure. And we independently represent the business's best interests. We design them the right system, and then we get them bids from the best suppliers in the market to then finance it, build it, own it, operate it. And what's amazing about this is, like you put solar on the roof of your house, you can do that on a mega scale for a business. You can reduce your operating costs massively, and you can reduce your emissions at the same time, which is a massive misconception in the market, that sustainability comes at the cost of profitability, and it doesn't. Even better, the government will pay you massive tax incentives to do it, so you can get up to 50 cents on the dollar every dollar you spend back in tax credits. And people want to actually finance these systems and build them and operate them and just sell you energy back at a lower rate than what you pay today, locked in for the next 20 years. So from a business perspective, you can manage your risks, hedge your risk, lock in a cost, and have reliable power for decades to come. And that's what's exciting. But the barrier to people doing that is they don't know anything about energy. They don't know what questions to ask. They don't know who provides these solutions. So that's where we come in. We help them navigate this landmine of options. We help them determine what's right for them, what the business opportunity is, and then why they should do it.
So just so I understand, when you're building out a commercial building, you might talk to your electrician about, hey, should I throw a couple solar panels up? Yet what it's sounding like is that you are an expert in multiple forms of renewable energy and understand how it can affect the bottom line. So you're like the general contractor to assemble the overall, we'll say, internal grid system on a very specific scale for that business.
That's
and ensuring they maintain their profitability. Am I understanding it correctly then?
Yeah, we call it on-site energy. Some people call them microgrids or distributed energy, but you're spot on. The way to think about it, Matt, is like you go to Expedia for your holiday buying experience. In the past, you'd either have to become a holiday expert or you'd have to go to a travel agent. And the travel agent would say, hey, Matt, where do you want to go? What airline are you interested in? Do you need to rent a car? Do you need a hotel? And there's lots of different variables and different options. How many people are going? Do you want to go 3-star, 5-star? Do you want a big car? Do you want a small car? There's lots of questions to consider. Now you go to Expedia and say, this week, I want to go on a 5-star holiday to Mexico, and it gets packaged up for you. And you can add insurance, you can add a rental car. We've used technology to do the same for businesses. Where am I located? How much energy do I use? What are my options? And to your point, we don't just look at solar, because in many cases, solar might not make sense. It might be solar plus a battery. It might be a gas turbine. It might be a diesel genset. We don't care. We want the right outcome for the business, and we tailor it to their needs. And I think the problem in the market today is, to your point, I'm a business owner, I'm building a building, or I've got one. I'm at the mercy of suppliers in the market telling me what to do. Hey, Matt, I want you to buy my solar panels. The next person shows up. Hey, Matt, I've got the best new battery in town. I want you to buy this battery. And you're going, I don't know whether to trust you or you. I don't even know whether I need a battery. Or are my utility rates actually the best solution for me? So we help you cut through all that noise and determine what's the right solution. So it's technology enabled, and then we bring in our consulting expertise to help you make the right decisions with confidence. We don't build it. We just help you get the right outcome.
So is Walgreens coming to you and saying, we've got hundreds of stores across the US, saying like, hey, we know there's probably an opportunity here, or is it coming from some other pain point? So can you give me an example of a recent success story?
I'll give you a few examples, actually, because the scenarios are quite different, and people think, oh, I'm a small business, this doesn't make sense, or I'm a huge business, and how could I even make sense of this? So at the extreme spectrum, we just signed on one of the top 5 largest automakers in the world, who have 18,000 car dealerships around the world. And you can imagine they're a car dealer owner who is transitioning from ICE vehicles to electric vehicles.
Right.
And they're saying to all their dealers, you now need to install EV charging infrastructure. By the way, that's going to mean you're going to consume more energy. So your bill is going to go up and your emissions are going to go up. We've committed to being net zero, which means we can't have any emissions. So this is quite the conundrum. Like, what do you do? Those objectives.
Yeah, those franchise owners weren't too thrilled when they got their notifications that if they want to renew.
I'm out. They're like, I'm out. Selling them out.
Exactly. So we're partnering with them to provide them the platform that they can offer to their dealers to say, hey, Matt, I know we've asked a lot of you, but here's a solution. So we'll help you. How many EV chargers do you have to put in? How much is that going to affect your energy consumption? To offset that, we can install solar or batteries or whatever the technology is. Now you've reduced your costs. You provided a service to your customers. You're going to attract more customers. You're going to retain them. And by the way, by having that on-site generation and storage, you've reduced your emissions. Everyone wins. But you'd have never had a clue how to achieve that. So we help you do that. We can help you finance it. We can help you have it built by the best supplier in the market for your needs. On the other end of the spectrum, we support manufacturing businesses, wineries, hospitals. And we just finished a project here, actually in the LA basin, where it's a steel manufacturing facility. And they are able to save $400,000 in energy costs per year and reduce their emissions by 29% by installing a solar and storage unit at their facility. Another customer who's a cold storage supply chain provider, they're building a brand new facility today. If they connected to the utility, they'd pay 25 cents per kilowatt hour. Doesn't really matter what that means, but They pay 25 cents for every unit of energy they consume from the utility. They had a solar provider come to them and say, we can offer you the same amount of energy, but we'll charge you 15 cents. And they said, I'm not sure whether I'm getting a good deal here. They used our marketplace. We got them 9 competitive quotes in less than a few weeks. And we're able to get them the same energy at 7.5 cents a kilowatt hour. So half the price of what the market told them, a third of the price of what the utility told them. And that'll save them millions and millions of dollars every year. And that's locked in for 20 years with no escalation factor. And so this is the opportunity for businesses is you can actually massively differentiate yourselves. You can achieve more profitable outcomes, more sustainable outcomes. And there's lots of benefits of doing that. There's marketing benefits, there's share price increases, there's the ability to attract and retain customers because they want to buy cleaner products. They know you're going to be reliable because your power is never going to go off. You can attract employees. So there's huge amounts of compounding value for doing this. If you can get past the fact that it feels hard and it feels overwhelming and it's different. Like in the past, you've relied on a utility. You've just paid your bill on auto pay.
Give me an example of like on the smallest scale, like not necessarily homeowners, but from a commercial perspective. I'm going to go build a 5,000 square foot office building. Is that somebody who would come to you, or is there a threshold? Where do you bring Vecta in?
Yeah, we typically like to support anything with an energy load, typically over what we say is 0.5 megawatt. So that could be a microbrewery, it could be an office, but it's very hard dealing with, say, an office in a downtown setting where they have no available real estate. So they don't have a roof, they don't have a car park. Ideally, they've got some space to be able to install the panels or a wind turbine or whatever it is that we decide the solution is. But even for the smallest fast food restaurant, we've done the analysis and we've found that in certain locations where utility tariffs are impacted by, I'm sure it's the same for you on a personal level. If you use energy at a certain time of day, you pay more for it.
Right.
By installing a battery in a fast food restaurant and being able to charge up the battery when the power is cheap during the day, when the utility's got a lot of solar power, you can then use that between the hours of 4 and 9 when they jack up all the prices and actually not pay that peak demand and then charge the battery up again through the night. And the prices of batteries have come down over 80% in the last 10 years. And so the previous misconception that batteries are too expensive at a residential scale, yes, you and I aren't going to go and drop 15, 20 grand on a battery today. I think that's still a bit too expensive. But for a commercial and industrial business, these things can pay for themselves in less than a year. And then you're in the money for the next 10, 15, 20 years. That's a pretty good business case. So there's opportunities to really manage your cost profile, but every situation is different. And that's why we want to look at it on its merit based on the business's needs, wants, desires, and local constraints.
So what's your story? What led you to entrepreneurship? Is there a specific moment, an event, an experience, something that happened that you knew that this would be your life's work?
Yeah, you touched on it in the intro, Nicole. I've had the pleasure of having quite a wild career. And one of the opportunities I had was to go off to Iraq after the Second Gulf War. I've had an environmental science degree. I've been supporting the oil and gas industry around the world to clean up old oil and gas well sites, oil spills, things like that. I was asked to go into Iraq after the Gulf War to do a liability assessment for the US oil and gas companies moving into the region to develop the oil infrastructure there. What liabilities would they be taking on? Soil contamination, water contamination, air pollution, social impact. So we spent 2 years assessing that. But through that experience, we were living on the US Army base in Basra. We were being mortar attacked most evenings. We were going out every day with personal protection teams. Every tire on the side of the road was a potential hidden roadside bomb. Every person on a phone was a potential someone, alerting others that we're coming. It was a very stressful time, but the turning point for me was we got to see that here we were unlocking the biggest energy reserves in the world for our economies in the West, and yet the local population was surviving on 2 hours of power a day. And when that happens, people like you and I are willing to do things we'd never think about doing to provide for our families. And so we were shown a video by the US Army one morning that showed 2 individuals firing a mortar into the base. They'd have to video it in order that they got paid for it. In this particular situation, in their haste to leave, they'd forgotten the video camera, so it was recovered. But the conversation essentially went along the lines of, man, this sucks. I wish I was at home with the family tonight. This rain and wind is horrific. That was like a moment in time where it's like, energy is the lifeblood of everything. And the moment we don't have access to reliable, affordable energy, it massively impacts our lives, our businesses, our economies. And we can't rely on this infrastructure that has many points of failure. Iraq's infrastructure being devastated through years of conflict. And so this is the mission. How do we generate an energy infrastructure that is flexible, adaptable, scalable, can meet our ever-growing needs, and do so in a way that we all have access to a thriving future versus a surviving future?
Incredible.
What I heard you say that, I thought about, the difference between motorized transportation, whether that be through train, boat, in masses, versus eventually the personal automobile in every home, right? It's the idea that people wanted to get from point A to point B, and probably many years before that, no one could have ever thought that every person in America would have a car sitting in their garage or something. And yet,
Or
when
four
someone
of
might
them.
say, or four of
Four
them,
of
yeah,
them.
who
Sometimes
knows?
there's like
Exactly.
four and there's only two drivers in the house.
Exactly. Yeah. But it's the idea that what you're saying is not far-fetched if you think about it, because if every single, frankly, home or even business, even if you just look at businesses from a commercial perspective, had the ability to generate their own power, their own energy on site, that's not that far-fetched. It's really here and it's now. It's just a matter of implementation, right?
Yes. I think we will get to a future where energy is just readily available, and we'll wonder why it never was. Like, there's still 1 billion people today in the world without energy. In this country, there are still tribal nations in the middle of the Navajo who don't have access to energy. That blows my mind. That should not be the case, because the technology exists today, the capital exists today, the capabilities exist today to do something about it. And this is the innovator's dilemma, isn't it? You touched on this with the transportation. If we'd have asked people when they were riding their horses, do you want something with 4 wheels, a chassis, and a motor? And you're going to have someone with a flag walking ahead of you, and you're going to be able to travel at 10 miles an hour. Like, are you interested in that? No one would have asked for it. They've asked for a faster horse, maybe 2 horses, maybe a carriage. We're at this moment in time where not many businesses are saying, I want an on-site energy system because I'm worried about the grid. But every time there's a power outage, in your local area, Chicago, the BP refinery was down for literally weeks. A transformer broke, and there is now a 2 to 3 year wait list to replace a transformer. The average lifespan of a transformer in the US should be 20 to 30 years. In the US, they are 50 plus years old everywhere.
Wow.
And so this is a problem that, like, the wave is building. People are feeling the pain. They're starting to see their utility bills go up. But it's that like frog in warming water. It's not quite boiling yet, but it's coming. And the people who get ahead of it and proactively embrace it will differentiate their business for decades to come. Those who get disrupted by it will be the equivalent of someone continuing to use a dial-up landline telephone when the rest of us are using iPhone 15s. Like, that is not the way you want to be running your business.
Yeah. So what causes them to phone you?
Yeah, it ranges from my utility just increased my rates by 50% versus last year. It was 20% before that, 10% before that. When is this ever going to end? It's actually never going to end. And so that's one scenario. The other scenario is the power just went out for 2 days. I lost 2 days worth of production. Halfway through a production run, the equipment went out, my machines broke. I've now got millions of dollars worth of replacement costs. I missed my delivery commitments. I'm now at risk of losing a customer contract. Or increasingly, supply chain pressures for more sustainable products. Walmart has really led the charge in this. They've embraced over 6,000 of their suppliers and said, you need to be providing your products in a more sustainable way. And by doing that, you'll continue to win our business. And right now it's a carrot. Come on this journey with us, reduce your emissions. We all win together. And they've reduced the equivalent of 1/5 of the annual US energy consumption in the last few years through what they call the gigaton product. But this is the carrot moment, and soon it'll become a stick. Hey, Nicole, if you're not going to sell me coffee that is sustainably produced, you're not going to win our contract. You're not going to be selling your product in Walmart. And that's going through the whole supply chain, whether you sell parts to the automobile industry, whether you sell to the aircraft industry. Everyone is saying, how much does your product cost? How sustainable is it? And are you going to be able to meet your delivery requirements? So these are the compounding pain points for customers. That's why they call.
You gave us a little insight into 120 pitches to venture capitalists. Tell me, did you find your 121st? What happened?
Yeah, we've done it a few times now. I was working for a large corporation, Worley. That's who I spent 15 years of my career with, traveled all over the world. We incubated an entrepreneurially designed the concept of vector within the corporation. We tested it, but we realized that we couldn't achieve what we needed to at scale being a part of a big organization. Too much bureaucracy, not enough flexibility, not enough independence. So we convinced them to give us our initial kind of angel funding, as it were. But then we needed to continue to validate the idea and get external funding. And so that's when the VC side of it started. We closed a round led by Volo Earth, who are one of the leading climate tech players. And I think that was really important because most VCs do not understand the energy industry. They don't understand that these projects take months or years. And so it needed someone who understands the trends, but is also patient in terms of like, this isn't going to be an overnight SaaS product that blows up because we're going to sell some, I don't know, marketing materials or something. These are physical infrastructure projects that we're facilitating. And then we closed the second round with a group led by Tech Square Ventures based out of Atlanta. Super cool because they run a program called Engage where they bring together 15 of the biggest corporates in the US, Coca-Cola, Delta, UPS, Wellstar, Home Depot, who all invest into their Engage fund, and then they support businesses to try and get contracts with them. So I think that's super exciting, and I'd encourage any of your entrepreneurial listeners to check out Engage, because if you want access to big corporates in a very non-threatening way, where you can iterate and test your pitch and have them as people on your cap table, that's a pretty nice win-win.
Yeah, indeed. So are there other platforms like yours, other companies like you? Do you guys get together? Do you guys hang out, spend time together?
I'd say in this market, there's definitely the traditional service-led consulting world. A lot of businesses will turn to their management consultants, but they're relying on people who do this as a 1 or 2 or 5% of their day job, and they don't live and breathe this. Or they go direct to suppliers in the market, the people selling the solar panels or the turbine. I'd say the competition today is disrupting that status quo way of thinking. There are starting to be other people who are thinking about how do you simplify this process, but I'd say we've got a several year head start in terms of our thinking and our product build out, and really using technology to automate a lot of what was previously manual consulting, engineering, procurement, contractual work. And there was a study done that was said up to 70% of project costs today are in those soft costs. And so our job is to compress all of those soft costs out of the system.
So what's the biggest struggle in running Vecta on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, I'd say there's two, and I think they're very well linked. The first is education and awareness of our target customers. We first have to educate them about where the market is today, why on-site energy makes sense for them, and then why Vecta makes sense for them. So it's like a triple hurdle sell. And then just navigating the sales cycles. Like a perfect customer for us is a Fortune 500 corporation with tens, hundreds, thousands of sites. And as you know, they are not quick sales cycles. They're worth it when you get them done, but they are months and years in the making. And so navigating that and challenging the status quo and getting business leaders to see opportunity versus risk is always a fun challenge.
I just sat in on a cybersecurity panel, which I think I may have said it best, but it might fit for you guys too. That industry, and possibly your industry, needs the schoolhouse rock. We need the after school specials. We need to start telling people early or sooner, because it always comes back to me to a communication problem or, yes, a marketing problem. And I've said, you know what, for cybersecurity, don't hit that link. That needs to happen really, really early. There were usually conversations around TV shows when I was a kid that if somebody was hurt, in danger, was domestic abuse or suicide or prevention, anything like that, at the end of a show, there was a hotline or a number. But there was always this story woven in that we all could walk away and have a conversation with it or just think about it. I'm like, we need that, but a little less death and scare and a little bit more on technology, cybersecurity, and then, of course, your industry.
I'm making it fun and exciting and interesting. And actually this being, how do I truly my role as a business leader to differentiate my business for years to come? There are not many levers that business leaders can be using today to save money, increase their brand, market their good deeds, attract finance, capital, employees.
That
customers.
Sold.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yes.
You just got to wrap it into some sort of unsolved murder mystery podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
and I guarantee if every time you're trying to sell the story to somebody, you're like, by the way, at this week's podcast, there was an executive at a former Fortune 500 company who got killed. And
oh my gosh. After he was going to check on his solar panels and
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, there has got to be a way to make sure it's a little bit more mainstream, because if people don't understand it, they don't understand it, right? They always click right through and move on or save for next time. And the picture that you painted of that we all are more alike than different, which I have to ask, that sounded like you have a heart for people that don't have access at all, even on our reservations here in the States. Is there something that Vecta is considering doing or is trying to do for any of those underserved areas? Because I know that's probably where your heart has been in all of this, but
Well, I know we hadn't teed this up, but it is awesome timing. We just partnered with Launch Alaska and the Department of Energy, and they're going to use our platform to help communities in Alaska access clean on-site energy, because today they pay the highest energy rates in the US because they are reliant on diesel. And you can imagine getting diesel into very remote Alaskan communities is expensive and it's time consuming and it's dirty and it's noisy and it's not good for anyone. I think that's going to be a really good proof point for what communities everywhere can be doing. My mission is clean, affordable, reliable power for all. We're starting with businesses today, the most complex, the most challenging aspect. And then, let's make it accessible to everyone at the right time.
Do you guys remember when, was it Texas? Could you imagine having a company or a manufacturing facility in Texas shut down for 5 days?
Samsung lost over $350 million in a week.
Wow.
did they call you? Yeah.
And how many people a day moved to Texas? I mean, I was like the second largest state, no offense to Texas, but it was public all over the press. Their infrastructure is one of the worst in the country, in the Britain-wide.
Highest outage rates, but
Highest
their power is
outage,
cheap. And so people don't think about doing it until it's too late.
Wow.
I don't get to watch a lot of TV or a lot of movies. That's true, nor do I care to. However, I did sit down and watch Julia Roberts and Kevin Bacon's latest movie, Leave the World Behind.
I never saw it.
Have you seen it?
No.
Gareth, you haven't seen it. Okay, so it's not necessarily energy related. I think you should see it. It will feel slow in the beginning. Sorry, Julia. It was a little slow in the beginning. It will feel like, what is Nicole making me watch? Is this some weird sci-fi? What's happening? I think if maybe we can pull at their heartstrings, I don't know what the marketing budget is. So if we can at least pull at Julia and Kevin Bacon's heartstrings, maybe the two of them together do a little bit of a marketing campaign for you. I mean, well, I'll pay attention to what they have to say. They could say it well. And I don't know, maybe their foundation or something wants to toss you some marketing education dollars your way. Okay, let's get you wrapped up here. What is one of the key lessons you've learned as an entrepreneur? Maybe it's something like a mantra you say again and again.
We've got 3 core values. So every day, I encourage the team to challenge limits, adapt purposefully, empower co-creation.
How would you define your entrepreneurial success? When do you know you've made it?
When everyone has clean, affordable, reliable power. It's going to be a lifelong journey and it's probably never going to be done. So some people would probably call that a vision statement, but that's the goal.
Milestones of cool cars behind you, maybe along the way. Maybe that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
A Porsche 911 to reward it at some point would be a nice bonus.
I love it. What's a link that you want us to know about, or maybe you want someone to connect with you in a certain way? We will link it in the show notes.
Dan Roberts and I run a podcast called Renewable Rides. Check it out. We try and make the energy transition interesting and understandable. Check out vecta.com, VECKTA.com. And then if you want to hang out and contact me personally, I'm on LinkedIn mostly. Any business leaders out there that are intrigued, reach out. Let's explore your options. And any people in the industry that want to co-create these solutions together, there is no silver bullet to this. So we all need to work together to get it done. So very open to positive partnerships.
Hey, it's Nicole, and that's the end of the interview. But stick around. This is the part where Matt and I break it all down and give you our favorite takeaways. Listen in.
I have to start out, Matt, by just saying communication is everything and everything is communication. My goodness, there's so much to learn about his industry, about what they do, their sector, the options, the variables. I mean, I think until we saw Expedia, that example he gave was great. Until we saw Expedia and then all the other ones after, we couldn't have imagined it before. And that's really what he's up to, is something that big, that level of Expedia big.
My takeaway was he talked about it's almost like a triple sale he has to do. And I don't know if everyone's industry is like this, where you have to first educate about the problem, then educate what the solution is, then educate that you are
I disagree. I think solution. You have one. This is a great takeaway. I think you're in one. The part of law that you manage for folks in estate planning, right. I think that's absolutely what you have to do constantly. You are educator and you are marketer and you are professional, right? Operator has to do that work, but you're always educating us, me, on what it means, that choice or this choice. I think there's actually more industries like this. I just think, to your point, this is one that there's very little education out there that's in the mainstream. I don't believe there's much in the mainstream.
And I think also, as we stated in the show, sometimes you have to kind of separate what's actually out there versus what's the noise around it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like what's maybe someone's agenda, whether it's politically, financially, whether your power company's a publicly traded company, right? You know, things like
Yeah.
that. That is what was eye-opening to me recently in the last couple of years. And then this just cemented it even more, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's another takeaway for you?
The other thing that kind of was a big thing for me was like how it's almost like a net zero. If we burn gas and oil, it's gone forever. It's done. Are we going to recycle every bit, 100% of every bit of lithium that comes out of the ground, of every bit of copper? Maybe not. Maybe some of it ends up at a dump. Maybe some of it ends up in other spots. I don't know. But the mere fact that like it's not a net zero. I mean, what if we're able to recycle 80% of that material, 90% of that material that's being mined?
Right.
That's a pretty positive impact on the planet, on people and stuff. And I don't want to go down a, we are the world kind of moment here, but I'm thinking like, wow, that actually made more sense to me as far as an argument than I've ever heard anyone talk about when I hear about renewable energy.
Yeah. So I like the we are the moment vibes that you're bringing. I think about their marketing and I think about the story. We love that story, right? Like we talked about that even before we did this takeaway. His story and what he shared with us on how those guys didn't want to be there doing what they were doing. On this one night, they were able to get a cell phone and spoke to humanity and how we are all like more than we are different. That I think about their marketing and how there has to be a really big place for that. Because you're right, we are the world, right? Our choices really do matter. And I think in so many other cases, other industries maybe, or other sectors or other humanities, for lack of better words, like whether it's water that's brought to indigenous countries or communities that don't have water, we actually all rally around something like that. And then all of a sudden water is in communities that didn't have it before. And so I really think that part of theirs has got to be that type of approach. He, at the end, compared how Amazon has revolutionized the way that we all shop. True. I pay attention to even their vehicles now. I ask the guy if they're ever driving one of the electric vehicles. I always ask them like, hey, how many more miles you got? Like it can be a regular conversation. When I see one of those trucks out, you should ask them next time you see one. One of my guys was like, I stay very close. I don't go too far. That's happened to me before where I've run out. But he compared that and how that their platform, Vecta's platform, could be the thing that revolutionizes how energy is traded, how energy is consumed. And I think that if we don't have a we are the world moment about it, we don't have some celebrities paying attention and holding hands, singing a song. I mean, I don't know any other more powerful way to get it out there besides saying, hey, we're all in this together.
Yeah, I just feel that it gets blown out of proportion when certain celebrities do it. And they come from a perspective of they're so focused on maybe it's global warming or something else. And then you have the political and financial objectives that get interfered with it.
Yeah.
Rather than you can just as simple as net zero versus a positive. Right? You burn gas and oil, it's gone forever. You utilize renewable energy with materials that even if it does cost you energy to get to those materials, even if it's not the most ideal scenario to get to it, but you can leverage that for eternity, essentially, or at least from an infinite possibility I don't think you can even figure out as of right now. That's the thing that I think needs to be told more, as opposed to, but we're doing it so that way then there's less coal being burned and it's not affecting our environment, which in turn is not affecting global warming. There becomes too much room for opinions and some very politically motivated and or financially motivated agendas where that net zero versus a positive is very simple logic to me.
I think that you're thinking that everyone out there, or certainly not listening, are bleeding heart liberals, right? That doesn't understand truth or facts. I think that they do. There's always going to be opinions and there's always going to be people saying something different, have an agenda that we don't know about. But I think the business community, I think that our listeners here are like, so you're telling me my spend, I get 50 cents back on every dollar? That makes sense.
Yeah.
Right? You were telling me
the 25 versus 7.5 cents of a kilowatt.
Right.
Like, come on.
Yeah. You're telling me that, wait, this is a better marketable opportunity and I'm getting ahead of some. I mean, I think that for the business community here listening, I certainly hope that politics aside, some of those numbers are cold, hard facts to all of us. And that means we win, right? We get ahead of it. I think that makes a lot of sense. But I mean, don't expect people to give up their opinions. They're always going to have their opinions.
Right.
Yeah. So that's okay. But maybe if we could get like some 80s, 90s vibe celebrities to, say, hey, this is something that we should all talk about. Ones that don't have anything that can come up in 25 years, negative against them, though. That's the tricky part.
Oh, I see. I got you. Someone who's just like cemented themselves as like, yeah, you really can't hate on them too much because they were whoever.
Yes.
They were like,
yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I got you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then if you get somebody who's also fighting the good battle for like a Michael J. Fox, somebody like that. He's
Right. Oh
fighting
my
the good
gosh.
fight against so many
Right.
other things too. Like, what are you
Right.
gonna do? You're gonna hate on him for one thing just because you don't happen to agree with him on this one little thing? No,
Right.
of course.
Yeah. See, like somebody that
No,
we all
Alex P.
love.
Keaton, Marty McFly
Alex
is in our
P.
hearts
Keaton, actually,
forever.
yes. Alex P. Keaton or Marty McFly, if they could have cameos and talk to each
Yes.
other about this, oh my, I'd actually pay.
Yes.
I'd pay big
Oh
bucks
man, you could
for
totally
5
do a Back
minutes.
to the Future spoof with this
Yeah.
from a marketing standpoint. Like, what would happen 100 years in the future if we don't do something? Like, where does the space-time continuum change if we make a change?
There you
Get him
go.
back on the show. Call him up. Call him up.
Well, Matt, you know what we always say?
If you're listening,
Keep listening.
You've been listening to the Serial Entrepreneur Show, produced by the team here at Smart Cookie Media.